What are the support services for victims? Like do break and enter victims experience a lot of trauma that they need counseling for or support? Am I understanding that correctly? Is that what you offer?
Well, it's interesting that you say that. We certainly offer that. We don't offer counseling, but we offer support to see people through, because so many break and enters, they're kind of that faceless crime, and you just it's just a break and enter, right? Like you should be able to find, just dust it off and get moving. And I was a police officer for 32 years. And I always felt that way. I was like, oh, just a break and enter, right? I've got a lot of calls in the queue and keep going until I was a victim of one myself and Oliver. And I realized the traumatic impact that had on me. And then once we started this project and started talking to more people, realized the necessity of providing that service to not just people that are victims of assault or domestic violence or homicide or car accidents, or sudden deaths, but that bigger picture, right? People struggle with crimes that are perpetuated against them, and that's their home, right? That's their business, that's their livelihood is all there. And so we offer so much more than just reporting it to the police, right? We'll help them with maybe looking at their surveillance system, right? Like we've taken some extra steps on that. Help them with maybe some egress and entry points or shrub cutting down, or just to know that there's support that's out there.
Right, so if I may, then what I'm hearing in part would motivate you is preventing future crime.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
But also supporting those that have had it perpetuated against them recently,
right,
which we weren't doing before.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah.
Councillor Page.
Yeah, thanks for this. I received this before when you guys were handing it out, and so super appreciated from the business community standpoint. To Councillor Lautenberg's question earlier, we had someone steal our sandwich board sign earlier today. And I had to chase after them and pick it up. And you may laugh, but the subsequent conversation was clearly someone experiencing a quite complex trauma. So we're working through with the NPD, what that next step looks like. But we've had these conversations within the community around having clear information on who to contact and how to deal with those situations, because it might just seem like a little bit of a smashed window or a stolen sign, but the subsequent interactions and thoughts about what goes on with our business is really unsettling at times, and it can be something that people need a lot of support for. Something I'm seeing a lot of, and I love the home, I love the home security, business security, and the car security, but there seems to be an uptick in the cyber component of it, and so it seems like there might be another customer profile there, or victim profile there in terms of what they need for a framework to reach out and do stuff. So I would maybe appreciate that getting expanded a little bit here. And I love the depth of the detail. Are you guys, between the place card, the small little fact card, and the big detailed one, is there an opportunity to maybe have something in the middle? Like a one-pager per?
Sorry, there is something in the middle too, so that's on the website as well. So that's actually in the mail out, because we talked about having something a little bit more readable in the mail out that people would actually look at. If it's too big and too in depth, people would maybe just skim it or just put it in the trash pile. So
yeah, something for the lunchroom.
Yeah. So we do have that, and for all of those different facets, so business, residential, and theft from vehicle, we do have those shorter, more fact sheets. But one of the things that you bring up, if you don't mind, Councillor Page, is that that's why we included all those numbers there, because the street outreach team, they will come and help with people who are clearly exhibiting concerns and problems. So they're a number that people can call there. And before it was a bit the de facto of going to the police, and then the police would disseminate from there. And that's why we wanted to get it out, so that people can call Public Works themselves, they can call street outreach themselves, they can call the fire department themselves, they can call the Chamber of Commerce, And you probably know all that from your role in here and elsewhere as a learned businessman, but others don't. And so that's why we wanted to make it so specific around what was available and what's out there. And when I say peer reviewed, we had the fire department go through this, the Chamber of Commerce go through this, street outreach go through it, people have gone through this and tried to add like even more detail, it got bigger. And in answer to your cybercrime, we have the structure for that, but we thought it was a bit too much to start with. So that is definitely on our radar because it got huge and it got so that we weren't going to get this out in a timely manner. So we decided to put that aside for now, but that's definitely on our radar too. So good point. Thanks very much for kind of confirming that for us.
No, I think it's great work. And just one small supplemental. I love this. It's great to know if you can text or you email. I use dispatch@nelsonpolice.ca. If I need to just fire something quick, but knowing that you can text street outreach and I'll text you back, because when you're running around doing stuff, it's just good to know the options that can work in that environment. It's something to do it while you're talking to the person.
And that was not our good idea. That came from the executive director of the Chamber of Commerce. He said, can you do like a contact card that people could just post near the register at their door that was really quick of all kind of those key partners that they might connect with after they read this document. So. Any other questions?
Councilor Payne?
I love this, and I think it could actually be more widely posted, because I talk to many people who see something happening and they just don't know what to do, so they hit 911. And I think we all understand that that's not the answer to every situation, but this is really valuable, so I don't know how we could widely disseminate it. We've already sent the tax bills out, so we can't put it in that, but yeah, I think it would be something interesting that more people would have access to. Knowing that I use those services sometimes, I actually put them in my phone, but I had to go out and find them first before I could do that. But to have this on your dashboard or in your purse or something, I would find valuable.
Sticker on the back of the wayfinding signs.
Yeah, there's just so much good information that would divert from clogging up the 911 line, which we know is expensive. So I think it's a great idea. So thank you, Tom. Thank you for implementing, and everyone down the line.
It was Tom's idea.
It was.
Yes, no, that's what I mean.
Yeah, it was great. We really appreciated him too. And yeah, they, all our support really looked through things with a fine tooth comb, which is what we needed, right? So, and we still find the odd thing, but basically it was as we wanted it to get out. So, and we had to get it out.
Yeah, no, looks great. Yeah, and there will always be tweaks and improvements, but looks great the way it is, so thank you.
Thanks. Okay, we'll move on to the next. Okay, so we have another large project that we undertook. And this has been ongoing for myself since 2016, and I was fortunate the Nelson Police Department gave us the leeway to carry on with it. So what it's called, it's neighbors, friends, and family, and we like to add co-workers, but it's a public awareness campaign for intimate partner violence. And if I take you back to 2016, there was the BC Coroner Service have death review panels. And they did a death review panel in 2016 on homicides specific to domestic violence. And in that, we looked at 100 cases. I was fortunate enough to be on that panel. And in that, we found that in a vast number of those files, there was a neighbor, a friend, a family member, or a coworker that knew about it. But they didn't talk about it because they didn't know where to talk about. They didn't know who to ask other than calling 911. And so many times you just think, I'm not going to call 911 because it just doesn't work for the family. It's not, it just doesn't work. So people don't. And they just, what goes on behind closed doors stays behind closed doors. A man's home is his castle. And for the men in the room, I hate to say this, but most of domestic violence is perpetuated by men against women, but there are the cases where it's the other way around, and certainly in my policing career, I've seen that on many occasions. But for this, we're going to mostly talk about domestic violence against women. So one of the recommendations that came out of that coroner's panel, there was 3 recommendations. One was better data access, better data quality. Number 2 was better collaboration between service providers. So we have interagency case assessment teams throughout the province. And the third one was public awareness. And that really didn't get off the ground until about 2018. And the RCMP became kind of the train the trainers in British Columbia for a program based out of Western University in London, Ontario called Neighbours, Friends and Family. And that's an intimate partner violence public awareness campaign that's been running. It's researched and developed and supported by the province of Ontario. So we tried to get the BC government to take this on, but it didn't go. So the RCMP took it on. Nelson was one of 3 pilot sites based on my interest and being on the death review panel. And we became a pilot site in 2019, and we were the only one in BC that got off the ground. But then COVID hit in 2020. And when I say we presented, my partner Nina and I, this was before Gina arrived, we presented to like Whitewater Ski Hill and the work programs here. We presented to Selkirk College and the Rotary Club. That was little, right? And it was a really lengthy program. It was an hour-long presentation. It left people feeling very almost traumatized, actually, because they were left with an hour's worth of our information about this problem, and they kind of had an idea of what to do with it. And then we left. So we had some follow-up from some people, and we decided to work with Western to shorten the program. They struggled with that, but their professors there did. They helped us shorten the program to about a half an hour. And then we decided, we had some money left over from the RCMP implementation, and we decided to go bigger. Let's do a presentation that's online that we can have some input in, so we can BCIze it. We had Margaret McPherson, the professor from Western University. She is the presenter you'll see in just a minute. And so now we have this program. So Neighbours, Friends and Family and Coworkers, it's jointly, I would say jointly supported by Nelson Police Department, the BC Society of Transition Houses, who are our peer reviewers. The RCMP was the funder, and then Western University. So we have now been, the crime prevention program provincially has sent it for the government, has sent it out province-wide now. The BC Society of Transition Houses has sent it out province-wide. Locally, we've even had Trail Fair pick it up, the community-based victim service program there have picked it up. It's going to be part of their program. It costs nothing. We have it on the Nelson website, the City of Nelson website, and people can pick it up and use it as they want. And we are grateful to Mayor Morrison for allowing us to show it to you as well. It's 32 minutes though, but hopefully you'll see the benefit of it, see the value of it, and maybe have some questions at the end. So we'll just start if that's okay.
Maybe we should get another TV in here.
TVs. Oh, the new TV's here.
Yes.
I like it. It has no glare.
It's
Hello, I'm Dr. Torna Pittman from Engender Equality, a Tasmanian.
Not the right one.
That's not the link.
Do you know where the link is? Because that's the one actually that came up. Maybe I'll just go backwards in YouTube. Let's see what comes
There's another tab open up.
Hello, I'm Dr.
Not sure if that's it.
here.
Nope.
Okay, just will be 1 minute while we do this. Sorry.
It's okay.
Everything works well
It
until
was,
it's
it's like not coming up.
Hi, I'm Margaret McPherson, and I'm a research associate.
Okay.
the Center for Research and Education on Violence Against Women and Children at Western University in London, Ontario. Today I'm going to talk about relationship violence and what everyone needs to know. This presentation is championed by Nelson Police Department and supported by the BC RCMP and the BC Society of Transition Houses. It's intended to teach neighbors, friends, and family members about relationship violence, how to recognize warning signs and indications of increasing risk, how to respond safely and effectively, and where to refer to find help in your community. The information is provided today from Neighbours, Friends and Families, a public education campaign sponsored by the Ontario government and managed by the Centre at Western since 2005. The research tells us that it is more than likely that in every room where Neighbours, Friends and Families is being presented, there are people who have been impacted by relationship violence, either directly or indirectly. The subject is difficult. It might be triggering, and so self-care is important. I will be showing videos, and I wanted to let you know that there is no physical violence in them, but the interactions between the characters may be challenging. If you're experiencing violence in your relationship, know that you are not alone and that there are people who can support you. Reach out. You have the right to be safe at work and at home. Join us in creating safer, respectful, and more supportive environments. Don't underestimate the power of your support. You can make a big difference in a person's life. There are universal practices that are trauma and violence informed. Act as if everyone you meet is dealing with trauma of some kind. You don't have to know their story to be supportive and caring. We take a bystander approach because we've learned from the evidence provided by death reviews that in many cases, it is the neighbors, friends, family members, and co-workers who are closest to the family who see the warning signs, but they don't know what to do with the information. To better understand intimate partner violence-related deaths and to identify prevention opportunities, a death review panel appointed under the BC Coroners Act was held in June 2016. The review panel was comprised of professionals with expertise in law, intimate partner violence, victim services, child welfare, Aboriginal health, public health education, and law enforcement. The panel reviewed cases over a period of 6 years from January 2010 to December 2015. During that time, 75 fatal intimate partner incidents occurred in BC, resulting in 100 deaths, with 73 victims and 27 perpetrators. The circumstances of the people who died were reviewed in aggregate. The review found that more victims were women, 78%, than men at 22%. Most victims were women ages 20 to 59. Almost 2/3 of all the victims had a known history of intimate partner violence in their relationships. Fewer than 1/3 had reported the violence to the police. Few of them had a protection order, 10. And 80% of the victims were killed in their own home. 3 areas were identified to reduce intimate partner violence deaths. And they included awareness and education, collaborative safety planning and case management, data access, quality, and information sharing. These findings provided the basis for recommendations that were made by the panel to the BC Chief Coroner. You can find the report on the BC government website. Search for BC Coroner Service Death Review Panel, a review of intimate partner violence deaths, 2010 to 2015. So that gives you a little bit of a background and some of the lessons learned. Looking ahead, we want to teach everyone to recognize, respond, and refer, engaging people as bystanders to tap into the network of relationships to help keep people safe. Relationship violence is violence perpetrated against spouses and dating partners in a current or former relationship, It knows no boundaries in terms of gender or socioeconomic status. We are using the term relationship violence in this presentation to describe couples who are dating, same-sex or heterosexual relationships, married, separated, divorced, or common law. Different terms can be used. Domestic violence, intimate partner violence, that's the term that's used by the government of BC. Gender-based violence and violence in relationships, which is the term used by the RCMP. Whatever the term, relationships violence can happen to anyone from any background, anywhere in Canada. And people who use abusive behavior to control their partner will be found in every social group. Our focus for this presentation is on women because most often they are the victims of serious injury and death by their male partner or other male family member. This is not to say that men don't also experience violence in their relationships and need support. From the Femicide Observatory, we saw that in 2021 there were 173 women and girls killed in Canada. When the accused was identified, 133 of them, 89% of them, were male. The experience of violence is not uniform. Everyone has a unique social location that can create advantages and disadvantages based on identity and characteristics such as class, gender, race, ethnicity, ability, age, sexual orientation, and your geographical location. You can see the structural inequities of society by the stats of whole groups of people who experience higher rates of violence. These rates show us where society is failing and points to the places where intervention and investments in prevention need to occur. There are different forms of violence. There's emotional and psychological abuse where you have somebody insulting you, belittling, there's humiliation, threats to children, pets. Sexual violence is very common in relationship violence, and so sex acts without consent, threats of repercussions or refusing. Criminal harassment, also known as stalking, is the repeated and unwanted conduct that creates fear. Might be following, watching you, tracking you. Physical violence, of course, is the intentional or threatened use of physical force, including pushing, hitting, cutting, punching, slapping, shoving, and strangulation. Coercive control is when you see multiple forms of violence that form a pattern of violence that's repeated. That's what we call coercive control. And I'm going to talk about that more in a few minutes. It's a myth that if there is no physical violence, it's not serious or dangerous. Financial abuse is another type of abuse where one person is controlling or misusing the money and limiting maybe a partner's ability to access school or work. Spiritual abuse occurs when your beliefs are used to manipulate you or dominate or control, or you're not allowed to practice your faith. Reproductive control is controlling your choices, might be pregnancy, access to health services. The BC Society of Transition Houses describes technology-facilitated violence, also called cyber violence, as referring to a range of behaviors that use technology to facilitate harm. Technology-facilitated gender-based violence, a form of technology-facilitated violence, can include but is not limited to hacking, surveillance, tracking, impersonation, harassment, spamming, recruitment, malicious distribution, and denial of services. Technology enables stalking, harassment, monitoring, and degradation through messages, public embarrassment, as well as coercive demands for sexual content. It is increasingly being misused in relationships. Conflict is inevitable in relationships. Sometimes it is both people who are fighting with each other, going from fight to fight. Each may feel like the victim, blaming the other for their own behavior. Every situation of relationship violence causes harm and should be taken seriously. But let's talk about power dynamics. Every relationship has conflict, but does the couple share power struggle for power, or is there one partner who is exerting power over the other, taking away their voice, their autonomy, their ability to act and to make choices? While all couples experience conflict, there is a difference in relational skills when it comes to resolving that conflict in healthy ways. Conflict that is escalated, unresolved, heightened, volatile, or ongoing is not healthy and can become patterned in a relationship, resulting in frequent bickering, arguments, one-upmanship, fighting, even physical confrontation. While power-struggling relationships may be unhealthy, they're not the same as abusive relationships, so they may be mistaken as such. Here is where it becomes really crucial to make assessments that differentiate between escalated conflict, where they're struggling for power, versus a pattern of abuse and control where one person is power over. Escalated conflict in relationships may need intervention, but if the only supports we have to offer must distinguish between an abuser and a victim, then we may well misidentify the dynamics in the relationship, label the parties involved as abuser and victim, and offer interventions that are irrelevant, inappropriate, and possibly damaging. The pattern of power over violence we are describing is also called coercive control. And increasingly, coercive control is recognized in Canadian policy and laws as the most dangerous form of relationship violence. It has been written into recent amendments to the Canadian Divorce Act. When one partner uses a pattern of abusive behavior to be in control of the relationship, it has also been described as intimate terrorism. Coercive control has the highest risk for injury and death and is most often perpetrated by men against their intimate partner. Victims often live in fear and will change their behavior to manage the ongoing threat of violence. Recognizing the violence as ongoing and occurring as a pattern is important because it makes it predictable and therefore preventable. It's like walking on eggshells. You have to be so careful all the time, because the smallest thing can set the violence off. You're about to get a private look into the lives of Gail and Brian. Watch for what makes you feel uncomfortable. And a caution, there's no physical violence, but there is tension and abusive behavior in the scene.
You're late. Where were you?
I thought we both agreed I should take as much overtime as possible until he found something.
You couldn't call?
I didn't want to wake you.
You're my wife, Gail. Man has a right to know where his wife is, don't you think? When you're not where you say you're gonna be, I worry.
What are you worried about? Did you come by the residence again?
I did. And guess who wasn't there?
I sometimes have to cover other shifts at other sites.
Mm-hmm.
We've been over this.
Who were you with?
No one. I was working.
But you must have been working with someone. Or maybe that guy, what's his name again?
Oh, come on. Seriously.
You know, you're not as clever as you think you are. What else have you been keeping from me?
Brian, I am not keeping anything from you.
Who are you going to Mexico with?
No one. I was going to tell you.
Do you think I'm stupid that I wouldn't find out?
No, of course not. No, I just... It was for my birthday, okay? I thought we both deserved to get away for a bit.
Well, forget it.
I'm just so exhausted.
And don't you ever go behind my back again.
This is the power and control wheel. It helps us understand the dynamics of power and control that are used to create the conditions where the threat or exercise of sexual or physical violence are always present. Just a look can convey the threat. So we see it in the movie where Brian bangs the counter. It's a threat. He's intimidating Gail with his finger wag. He feels entitled. A man has a right to know where his wife is. He's verbally, emotionally abusive. You're not as smart as you think you are. And he's blaming her for his actions. He shows up at her work. He's blaming her for that. He cancels the trip to Mexico without any discussion. And he doesn't want her working with her male colleagues. Seen together, this is what creates the pattern of violence. These tactics on the power and control wheel are good illustrations of what we're talking about. We want everyone to be able to recognize the warning signs of controlling abusive behavior. And a warning sign doesn't automatically mean it's abuse. Rather, it's a warning sign, like a red flag to say, pay attention. Some examples include put-downs, dominating the conversation, making all of the decisions in the relationship, checking up on the partner, acting like a victim, isolating the person from their friends and family, acting superior and more important than others at home. The partner experiencing abuse may be apologetic and making excuses for the behavior, maybe becomes angry when asked about it, or is nervous talking when the partner is around. They might be covering up bruises or injuries. Maybe plans are changed at the last minute with some excuse. Results in changes in behavior such as being sad, lonely, withdrawn, afraid. Maybe they're using drugs or alcohol to cope. This is a list of the most common risk factors for lethality, identified through domestic homicide case reviews by death review committees. Studies in the Canadian Domestic Homicide Initiative. There's a history of domestic violence. Actual or pending separation. Obsessive behavior of the person who's causing the harm. Depression of the perpetrator. The level of violence is increasing. There are prior threats or attempts of suicide. There is a threat to kill. There's attempts to isolate the victim. And about half of the time, the victim has an intuitive sense of fear. The perpetrator might be unemployed. Those are the top, most common risk factors from the death reviews. The pie chart shows us that risk factors are almost always present, most often in combination. 70% of domestic homicides had 7 or more risk factors that were known prior to the homicide. It's very rare, only 1% of the time, that the murder happened without any warning. So let's talk about responding when you see the warning signs. Once you have recognized something that makes you feel concerned, it's a warning sign. How do you respond? You should know that isolation goes hand in hand with abusive relationships. As the abuse intensifies, so too does the isolation. People become more and more isolated, which increases the risk for serious harm and death. So our strategy is to reduce the isolation to increase safety. To reduce isolation, talk with the person that you are concerned about. This is Rhea. She's a friend and a co-worker of Gail's. She's worried about Gail and her relationship with Brian. So let's watch and see what Rhea knows about the situation. Listen for the warning signs that she names.
All right. Listen, I'll be thinking about you while you're lying on the beach with a drink in your hand and I'm stuck here in -15.
Oh, I forgot to tell you, that's not happening anymore.
What? Why? I know how much you were looking forward to it.
Yeah, we canceled it, just for now.
But that was your birthday trip.
The timing just wasn't right.
Oh, what? For who? For you? For Brian?
What's that supposed to mean?
I don't know. I see you working so hard, taking extra shifts to save money, making plans, and then all of a sudden, it's all off? I mean, I can't help but wonder if maybe it was Brian who called it off.
That's not what happened.
He's still reading your emails, isn't he? God, how can you stand it? Now, why don't you just say something?
You don't think I've tried?
Well, you know, obviously you haven't tried hard enough.
Oh, what am I supposed to say exactly, huh, Rhea? What am I supposed to say? What? You tell me, now that you're such an expert at relationships.
He's just, such an asshole about everything. I'm sorry, I had to say it. He's always turning on the charm, making everyone else think that he's such a great guy, and meanwhile, he's treating you like shit.
He's still my husband.
He doesn't even tell you when I call. I mean, if that's not possessive, I don't know what else is.
Oh my God, is that what this is all about? You're jealous. You're jealous because I have somebody who cares about me. And what do you have, huh? A bunch of legal fees and an empty house?
There he is. He's checking up on you.
I should go.
So what is the impact of Rhea's conversation? When I watch that scene, I think that Gail probably won't talk with her about it again. It looks to me like the door was closed. We can understand that Rhea is afraid for Gail. She can see those warning signs. She can see indications that things are getting worse. But she responds by wanting Gail to do something to make it stop. She doesn't understand abusive relationships, and in a sense, she's blaming Gail for allowing Brian to behave this way. This is very common, blaming her for what he is doing, and it's not right. Brian is responsible for his behavior, and Gail is doing her best to keep herself safe. She does need Rhea's support, but at the end of the scene, it's not hard to imagine that Gail's going to start to hide what's happening because she feels judged, blamed, and probably ashamed for being in the situation. Do you think this is what Rhea wanted? How else could she respond? What could she do differently? I can suggest a 3-step conversation framework that can help Rhea. See it. That's the first step. That's when you see something that makes you feel uncomfortable. You know something isn't quite right. Some people call it their spidey sense. Name it. It's putting the name to that feeling of concern, and it's using the warning sign. I saw, I heard something. Name that warning sign that you're aware of, and just the facts. Keep your judgment out of it. You can also name your concern. I'm worried about you. And then the third step is to check it. It's the step back. Think of see it and name it as 2 steps toward a situation, and now take a step back to check what is happening, to hand the power back to the other person about what's going to happen next, to ask questions. Remember that a warning sign doesn't mean that abuse is automatically happening, and she might not be ready to talk about it. It can take a long time for a story to come out. So you sync it, see it, name it, check it, not to solve the situation, not to fix it. You sync it to open the door for support. That's the goal, to open the door, to reduce the isolation, to be a support. Because one supportive person can make a huge difference to Gail. So let's give Rhea another chance.
Well, I just see you working so hard. Taking extra shifts to save money, making extra plans, making plans. And then all of a sudden, it's all off. And I can't help but wonder, maybe it was Brian who called it off.
That's not what happened.
So don't take it the wrong way. But I'm a little concerned about what's been going on between you and Brian lately. And with what I've seen and what you've been telling me, I think that you need to be careful. I'm just a phone call away. Anytime, day or night. Okay?
So what was the impact this time? Is the door open? Will Gail talk to Rhea at some point? I think it's possible, maybe even likely. Don't push. You have to manage your concern. If she doesn't want to talk about it, respect her choices. It's up to Gail how much she shares and what kind of support she wants. Take your cues from her. Leave the door open even if she doesn't want to talk about it. I'm here for you whenever you want to talk. As the situation changes, an open door on communication will increase safety. Think of it as a human being approach, one person to another. You don't have to be an expert. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to solve the problems of another person's life. Start from a place of your genuine concern. It is a powerful thing to say to someone you know who is alone and afraid. I'm worried about you. I care about you. Your safety is important to me. Don't underestimate the power of your support. It can make a huge difference. Gail and Rhea are also co-workers, so safety is a responsibility for employers too. Relationship violence also happens in the workplace, and women have been killed at work. In recent years, changes to the Canada Labour Code and occupational health and safety legislation has explicitly included relationship violence as a workplace hazard. Employers have a responsibility to protect workers from violence and harassment. The BC legislation under the Workers' Compensation Act references attempted or actual violence by a person other than a worker of any physical force, including threats or violent behavior that could cause injury. Our recommendation to employers is to take action when warning signs first appear. If you wait for physical violence, you're waiting too long to act. When relationship violence shows up at work, it is most often to come into view through abusive phone calls and texts, stalking, harassment, and the abusive partner coming into the workplace. These statistics are taken from the 2014 national study, Can Work Be Safe When Home Isn't? This video shows some examples.
But many of your coworkers have brought forth valid complaints about you not pulling your weight around here, and that is a problem.
Hey! What happened there?
Oh, I fell. Yeah, it was several calls actually. He was pretty unhappy the last call. Angry, actually.
Your last on-board service evaluation isn't much better than the one before. You're still late for pre-flight briefings, if you show up at all. And there are issues with your uniform.
At work, relationship violence most often shows up as performance issues. You notice a good worker is suddenly having performance issues, frequently late, taking more time off. Maybe there's behavior changes and she seems anxious, nervous, or irritated. Maybe she's using alcohol or drugs to cope or has bruises that can't be explained. Maybe receiving upsetting phone calls or texts. And things like maybe having limited autonomy with no opportunity to interact with coworkers outside of work because she has to get home. Remember, a warning sign is a red flag. It doesn't automatically mean abuse. It just says pay attention. You can see it, name it, check it, sync it at work when you're concerned about a coworker. You see it. She's taking off a lot of time. She's missed a deadline. She doesn't seem herself. You can name it. I'm worried about you. You've been off a lot. You missed that deadline. Take that step back and check it. Are you okay? Do you want to talk about it? Listen and respect her choice to talk or not. Do what you can to leave the door open for support. We've talked about recognizing warning signs and risk factors and how to respond using the sync it conversation. The final section is about referring to services and supports and how you can find help in your community. You don't have to be alone with your fears and concerns. It's hard to hold this kind of information, and so you can look for support for yourself. It's all about relationships. Tap into your local networks. Learn about the services. Be proactive. You can also do things like donate, volunteer your time at many organizations. Be part of the change that we want in creating safe, supportive, respectful communities. These are a few provincial and national numbers and links, starting with the 911 call for emergencies. You can also call the victim link at the 800 number. Shelter Safe will tell you where to find a shelter and services anywhere in Canada. The BC Society of Transition Houses has a directory showing services across the province. On those websites, you will find information about safety planning. And then WorkSafe BC has great resources for employers, including a toolkit. And finally, Neighbours, Friends and Families has a website with information about relationship violence that you've seen during this presentation. The iHeal is a Canadian app that's backed by years of research and testing. It's free, private, and secure. The iHeal app helps women who have experienced abuse from a current or past partner to find personalized ways to stay safe and to be well. Finally, you don't have to be a hero. You don't have to fix the situation. Little things you do can make a big difference. If everyone has a role to play, then I hope you have learned something about the role that you can play as a neighbor, friend, co-worker, or family member. Take the warning signs seriously. Thank you so much for taking this time today to watch this presentation. I hope you have found it useful.
It was long and I know it's heavy, but you know, I mentioned before I'd been in policing for 32 years and I've been doing victim services now for almost 8. And I would have thought that this would have changed in my service and it hasn't. It's just as prevalent here as it was in all my past postings, and it is just one of the most common forms of violence and it knows no boundaries, as she mentioned, so.
Councilor Ward.
So through all this information, obviously a lot of the weight here is on men and being responsible for our behavior. And so I think I have a 12-year-old son and my wife and I feel like we're in a battle against kind of a manosphere or sphere. It's kind of this new retrograde male behavior which is being propagated out of the United States mostly, about treating women terribly, and it's kind of this it comes through phones and the internet, and it's you know it's having effects, quite a bit of effects. We see it in it's at Trafalgar, and we see it in the culture there. And so my wife and I actually were just talking about all of this recently, and we were saying how, you know, young men they don't catch young men early and give them an education in, I don't know what's the word here, it's like, well, just basically treating people well, especially opposite sex. Just wondering about where you feel we're at culturally, because it's quite concerning as parents of a young teenager. I'm really worried about where this is all going. We notice our son will say things off the cuff that are, wow, it obviously comes from the internet. And, it's concerning, I have to say. I feel like bad actors out there are using this to coalesce young men into these groupings that are not healthy, and it's not healthy relationships with, that's for sure.
And a key word you said there was grouping, right? It rarely happens as a singular entity, right? It's when it's a bit more of a pack, the pack mentality. We only have to watch the news right now to see, you know, that being, you know, day by day, the play of what's, you know, happening. You know, that's a really good point. And the schools have long battled with what's appropriate. In fact, we had a presentation that we tried to show to the schools 2 years ago around relationship violence, and it was, we couldn't get into the schools, so they really struggle, I know, with that type of work. I think the biggest thing now is just like that positive role model and being with your children, right? And that's really key right now. Key. And talking through everything that's happening on the news too, like having those conversations with your children is absolutely important. And then healthy pursuits like team sports, but healthy team sports, right?
Just a supplemental, Mayor. You know, one of the things that my wife and I were talking about is how in the past a lot of young men would have been scooped up into training in a trade or some kind of early career, and now it feels like that's really missing. A lot of the groups that used to do that kind of work have dissipated. Family groupings are quite small now. Community groupings are quite small. So I feel like a lot of young men are kind of adrift, and of course the phone is and pure orientation, totally pure oriented, of course, going into teenagehood. So, and it really feels like we're kind of losing young men to something. I don't mean to be speaking hyperbole, but it feels that way. And my wife and I are really working with our son to like try to speak about these things and how to combat and not fall into them. But it definitely feels like we need to somehow as a society catch earlier and give young men I guess a sense of purpose or a direction that's not driven by mass media, but it's more locally focused. I mean, Councillor Page and I, it was that men's group. Remember that we're trying to do that.
Men's Shed.
Men's Shed idea, like kind of.
Yeah, they're a gym not that long ago.
Right, and of course, sports I think are a big part of that. Scooping up young people and having them learn to work well with each other. It definitely is. It's have to say it for being a father of a 12-year-old. It's quite concerning.
And it's interesting that you're that aware of it, because many families are not. And that is what's going to propel your child into positive adulthood, because he has parents that are engaged and are willing to go the length and have those difficult conversations. And across the board, there's thousands that are not willing to do that work because they want to be friends, right? Or they just turn a blind eye, or that's difficult conversations. And that's why we arrive at things like we've tried to create in this video, just reminding people. But you have lit a little bit more of a fire under me. I mean, we were a bit devastated when we couldn't get into the school a couple of years ago with that. And granted, it was more around sexual violence, but maybe we should go back around just a bit more around relationship violence. And much like you reminded us, Councillor Page, around, really keep working on the cybercrime, because that's important. You've kind of reminded me to keep working on the fact that we need to try to somehow work with the schools around, just maybe even term it a little bit softer around relationship violence too, because we could make a difference, right?
I think it's that 12 to 14 period.
So vulnerable.
They're so vulnerable. They really need direction and positive reinforcement on relationship building. Their own peer group, but also with the opposite sex.
We have a group of 5 in right now into our restorative justice program that have had a similar problem, but it's not involving relationship violence, it's involving like just that age group that you're talking about it. And we're working around a restorative practice with them. Right? So, yeah. Thank you very much.
Councillor Payne.
Yeah, I really appreciate the good work, and along the lines of Councillor Woodward, as I was watching it and doing the training, I guess as we were doing for the last 3 minutes, it also made me think of the demographic age-wise in terms of what that's targeted to. And so my question is, as we continue to develop this kind of programming and get stuff, for those other age brackets, for those, people right out of school, that's a seminal point in people's lives. It's when relationships are started, it's when bad patterns start to develop. there's broader cultural conversations about how demographics get together and share what, you know, the modern day code of honor is supposed to look like in these situations. So maybe you could tell me a little bit more about what the future holds for this kind of programming over the next couple of years, how we find more funding for this kind of programming, how we build the demographics that it serves, and the suite of services that can be offered, so people are getting at some of these situations before they get as far down the line as, you know, people in their mid-40s, you know.
Well, first off, let me say I'm ridiculously excited that you're taking that much of an interest in it, because this is hard work, and it's people don't want to talk about it because it's so common. And I'm sure we can all think back to some people, many people, a few people, more than a few people in our lives that we've thought, you know, what goes on behind closed doors has to stay behind closed doors. So I'm really grateful that you're, you know, willing to push us that hard, because this is the first of its kind in BC. We've never had public awareness, and it's come out of Nelson, so we're really proud of it. But you know what, you just give us the courage to keep working at it. And there is funding for this, right? There is funding, and we talked long about who would be the best presenter, and we thought about Nina or I, or we thought about the executive director of the BC Society of Transition Houses, but ultimately we went with Margaret McPherson because she knows this topic so well, and she's the professor that brought this to light for the Ontario government, and we just felt comfortable with her being our narrator. But you know, we could have more conversations with her about the words that we've had here today, right? About that demographic, that youth demographic that people are really concerned about. And does she have any ideas too about how to get into schools? Actually, I have many peers that I could have conversations with about. So I appreciate those comments, and I'll work on them.
Well, the other thing, if I may, is just as we get into the end of this year, this would be a great thing for something like the AKBLG, the Association of Community Boundary Local Governments, which are conferences every April, and there's an intake always around December and January. It's always in the area. But I would encourage looking for that call out and reaching out to them ahead of time and say you'd be interested. This is a great plenary or half session that could happen to just put it in front of local government. And local government, some of the cyber stuff that happens for public figures, I think is the kind of thing that would resonate with the kinds of movies they see and what they see in their own community. Sometimes, you know, counselors spelled a particular way, but, you know, to people in the community, I think we've all sat and had conversations that are quite difficult, and it's because we're trusted figures. And it's important, I think, to see that this kind of program can be happening across the interior at a minimum. So,
Yeah, just that basic awareness, because people don't know how to have the conversation, so they say, oh, just call the police, or we'll just handle it, right? We'll handle it in the family. But there's so much more that can be done, right? As mentioned there, for resources, and yeah. No, thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm interested in the tie to restorative justice, and it got me thinking of was any of the research done with Indigenous ways of recognizing and managing intimate partner violence, not only in Canada, but maybe in other Indigenous communities around the world? Because my understanding is restorative justice is from that area, Indigenous communities,
Not
ways of learning.
specifically,
Just
sorry.
interested to.
And power-based crimes have always been one that have been kind of held out of the restorative justice realm, with the exception of with Indigenous communities. But there is a bit of a momentum starting to look at it, but with great cautiousness it's being looked at. Like, how can you think about that power and control wheel? There's so much power that's on one side, and is that the right place for that victim to work in that restorative field, right? It's difficult. It's difficult work, but the conversations are being had.
I think it's an interesting aspect to look at, but thank you. Lots of good information.
So I want to thank you, and just one of the things I wanted to mention to you, and I wanted to mention it to you after you did the presentation at the police board, and we always keep carrying on so quickly with so many things, as we do here as well. But I was involved a few years back with a program called Be More Than a Bystander, which is twigged to me by Councillor Woodward talking about boys, but I mean, it was basically, it went out to high school students and it incorporated the BC Lions. It was a program that they did, so sort of the big macho, one should make stereotypes out of people, but big macho football players went into classrooms and presented about the fact that that violence, gender violence isn't appropriate. Some work also on harassment and bullying, and I think that program still exists, and they have over time gotten funding from the BC government as well as the BC Federation of Labour, as well as Tech Resources. And so when I think about them being a sponsor and they're just sort of down the proverbial street from us, it'd be interesting to see where that program is and how we could utilize it. It of course was great for Lower Mainland schools, and there was a lot of uptick, and I'm not too sure where that program has landed. My understanding is it still exists in some capacity, but it would be, I think, a nice complement to the work that you're doing. And then if you were to get into the schools, this might be the way, because this was really driven at trying to get the teenagers sort of involved, or trying to find something that made people kind of get engaged, with paying attention to the program. I know that if I was to go into school and talk about this with young people, they'd be just like, oh, well, that was, they'd be on their phones scrolling the whole time, so.
They're not allowed phones at their desks anymore.
Oh, okay, well, good things do happen. Anyways, but I wanna thank you for your time, and you can see that, it was worthwhile having you come and present to council, and that to know that we do support the work that you're doing there in victim services and all the things that you do over there at the police station. Sometimes we feel like we're in two separate worlds, but I think we're all on the same page together on these issues. So thank you again for your time.
Thank you very, very much for your time tonight. That was great, thank you. That's ours on Western?
Yeah, right, get on that, thank you so much.
And just once again, while they're just picking up their stuff, is that this is on the video is on the city website. So for those people that want to use it or refer somebody to take a look at it or whatever, it is there. It has been posted, I believe, for the last about 6 weeks perhaps on the city webpage, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good night.
Good night.
Okay, moving on. Our next is city manager. Do you have any report that you'd like to give?
A few things. Just let council know that Chris Johnson, myself, Sarah, and Gabe attended the chapter meeting of our Government Managers Association in Fernie last Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I guess it was, a week ago. There's a number of good workshops there. One of the important things there is, there was the one I enjoyed the most was us coming together as local governments. There was 3 or 4 topics that were thrown out and some really good discussion and solutions, and sharing there was really great. Just from a practical point of view, one of the speakers was on accessibility and identified a grant that was available, and I know Sarah jumped on that right away. It was a $25,000 grant, so that's some of those practical things that come out of there. So that was some excellent networking and some excellent leadership development. Again, Chris and I, along with the mayor, Councillor Payne and others, attended the workshop on bridge and rural homelessness by Suffolk College, and one of the practical things that was again identified there was looking forward. Is there an opportunity to provide some casual employment opportunity for those that have barriers or experience homelessness? You know, we identified things like you know, cleaning up in the downtown, managing the washrooms, those sorts of things, cleaning up some of these encampments that we're spending money for contractors to do, and can we employ these folks to, you know, do that and create that accountability that we're essentially addressing those same issues. So I thought this year you know, there was some really good practical sort of items identified there. So the last one we're working on as the city to look at whether we can create some of those opportunities. The Strategic Priorities Fund, it just came out today. We attended a session with the person that actually, his team from the ministry actually scores these grant applications. It is a UBCM program. It's part of the Build Canada Fund, the old gas tax fund. It's up to 7 million, 100% funded. So we have identified a few different projects. The one that we would like to bring forward is, you know, the replacement of the force main out to the sewage treatment plant. I think as council's aware that we had some challenges with that. We had an order on that to replace that, and talking to the program administrator, he thinks that would score quite highly, you know, for a grant funded project. We also want to start discussions with the RD around bringing forward some of the upgrades that are required, particularly the Civic Center Arena project. So that's obviously dealing with the structural part of the roof on that, plus replacing the infrastructure for the ice plant, adding a cement floor that would make that a year-round facility. So we're gonna start those.
Start those what? Pardon me?
Just the discussions with the RD about that project. A couple, just to also let you know, a couple of the recreation partners are going to also approach the RD about a potential recreation grant. That's the climbing wall and soccer as well. Are also seen that and they're really interested in whether that's something that we would support. So as a city, we're only allowed one application. My understanding is that RD's allowed 3 applications.
What's the name of that grant?
It's
Strategic
Yeah.
Priorities Fund.
Oh, that's what I wrote down, okay, thanks.
I'll let Chris give an update a little bit on the liquid waste management plan and where we're at with that. Because that sort of impacts our grant application. We need to advance that so that we can give them that comfort that we're going to replace this out to where the wastewater treatment plant will ultimately be located. We're also been having meetings around succession planning and business growth. Where do we see sort of that staffing, either people leaving or a demand for staffing, as you saw today or this year's budget around that capital side of it. So as you're aware, we have some large capital projects coming up, and we're going to have to think of how we staff those as an example of that. Also on staff development, there's a leadership workshop that we're planning with Dr. Leslie Beaton that's done this over the last couple of years, so that will be in Nelson with our with all our management staff and supervisors. One of the things we're going to focus on is we recently did what we call a pulse check. I'll send out to we've done it with our exempt staff. We've also with our QP staff, although we've worked on we haven't got as much feedback from the unionized staff, we got excellent feedback from the exempt staff, and so one of the things they definitely have identified is just that workload and how to manage that workload, and just feeling challenged with that. So we're gonna focus a lot on how do we do that in a better way. So that will be happening on June 4th and 5th. And again, and just on that collaboration piece, we initial meeting with Castlegar on what they're doing around GIS, because they're sort of in the same mode we are in. They had a legacy GIS system that's no longer supported, and so we just wanted to make sure that at least we're planning together, that how we approach this is common, so we can have, even if we have separate systems, we can have common training, common all those sorts of things that that we create that support network out there. So that's it for me.
Yeah, I'll just provide a quick more detail on the liquid waste management plan. So again, this is the plan that local governments in BC have to go through to complete, approved by the minister, allows the municipality or local government to go forward and borrow money to build said plant. So last year, it's a 3-stage process, sort of soup to nuts on how long it takes a municipality. Some that are very long, that have very complex issues, into the 16, 17 years to do it. We are going to try and keep it to the 3-year timeline as best we can. One of the main reasons being the force main is really forcing us to get on that, and that obviously goes to a set location. So we submitted our stage 1 report in the late fall of last year. We've received some feedback on that and from the province, and have been working towards putting together our stage 2 work plan. So with that, they have asked that we do additional engagement with the community to ensure that people, that ultimately the minister, when it hits that stage 3 report, the minister sees it and says, yes, I believe that the residents have been effectively communicated with around this project and are basically in line with the selection of the location and processes that go into that. So stage 1 was really about selecting a site, identifying a site, so taking it from a long list down to a short list. We've here at the table primarily talked about the short list, which was 70 Lakeside Drive, or the existing site where it is out at Groman Narrows. So we're just having to do some sort of cleanup, I guess you could call it, in that stage 1, where we at least show what that long list is. As most of us Nelson folk know, or all of us, there is not a lot of locations around Nelson where you could put a wastewater treatment plant without having to seriously rejig our system to actually have the wastewater reach the plant. So we're walking through that long list that will be presented in new information that'll come out, and then we'll highlight the 2 locations, 70 Lakeside Drive and the existing site, and that'll have a pros and cons table to basically educate residents on how the system works and what the pros and cons of each site are, and then engage them on, what are your thoughts on where this plan should be based on the table, and ultimately get there. So we anticipate that will be coming out here in June for engagement. Now, we know that it's always challenging with the amount of engagement that goes out to our residents, but that is something that the province is requiring us to go back and do, despite the responses that we'd already got in the first wave of engagement. So you will be seeing more about the LWMP coming out, and it will go back to that siting question. Will be the bulk of that focus there. There will be some other stuff. Yes,
Councilor Rood.
Thank you. So GM, I'm wondering about as we move through this process, is our wastewater treatment plant, is the pressure growing on it due to more use or is it fairly stable? So that we can plan with that kind of, stable flow, we have this much time? Or are we seeing an increase in flow going out to the plant where our timeframes are becoming smaller because we have to deal with it sooner? I guess I'm looking for kind of like.
Are we seeing a increase in the curve or the amount? No, we're not seeing a major increase that's really driving this. What we're seeing is the processes and technology that we have out of the plant really being maxed out, right? And so council has done some great work to approve budgets. We're right now refurbishing a couple more of the rotating biological contactors that go around. So that will really support our ability to continue to treat the volume that we have. But we don't have a lot of room for growth to add additional volume out there. So that's really, considering how long a plant will take to, design and build, that's certainly something that we are looking at as well. We do a lot of work on our I&I, inflow and infiltration. So not wastewater getting into the wastewater pipes. Now, back in the day, you look down a manhole, you just see it's like a pipe, but the top half is just cut off. And that's where the sanitary or the wastewater is flowing through. Lots of rain can get into those, so we're doing things like sealing manholes. Again, we know that Baker Street itself has all the storm leaders from the roofs of all the buildings along Baker Street are tied directly into the wastewater. So that I&I is really an area that we need to control, and that's where the impact of a changing climate we're seeing. So, more extreme events, but more importantly, the frequency of said extreme events is greater. So then we see this I&I that can really tip the scales on how much the plant can handle. So when you get a really heavy, short duration rainstorm, all of that going right into our pipes flushes out the plant and it's pretty challenging for the plant. So we're as well doing a lot of work on that. And last year we did a project that functionally tied one of the many creeks that runs underground in Nelson had historically been tied into the wastewater. So, we actually tied that into storm, and that was that work that went right out in front of the Hume. So we continue to grab those opportunities where we see them and not just do it opportunistically, but planned. So we're trying to improve our I&I, but overall, our plant is able to handle the people that we have, with a little bit of growth added onto it, provided we continue to manage that I&I flow and we know what that sort of upstream contributions are from the storm system. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
So, council, I'm just, how quick is your question? We are going out dinner, so I'm just sensitive to the
Pretty sure
time.
it's quick,
Okay.
but you can just shut it down if it's not.
Okay.
I know with Nelson Hydro, we have done a lot of work around peak demand and explaining to people the costs of what peak demand is. I know when Colin Innes was here, he was talking about peak flow periods. Have we ever communicated, pardon me?
St. Patty's.
Yeah. Okay.
Have we ever communicated to?
Yes,
Yeah.
have we ever communicated to the residents that if you could set your dishwasher, your washing machine for outside of that, the time that we remembered and implemented in our home was 7 a.m. to 9 a.m.
Yeah.
Just a thought, because it seemed to me he indicated that all of a sudden you get this big rush at those times. I don't know if we've ever shared that information.
Yeah, I don't think as intentionally as demand management, theories at Hydro or Nelson Hydro or any a hydro provider. But yeah, no, we haven't gotten into that and it's something that we can look at and perhaps as we get closer to while we're waiting on a new plant, we might have to look at that. But yeah, the real sort of peaky challenge is again comes from those rainstorms when we get hammered. But yeah, it's a good point.
Okay, so council, if I could have a motion to recess? By Councillor Woodward, second by Councillor Tate, all those in favor, and that carries.
We should be good to go.
So the mayor.
This doesn't take very long, so. Okay, everyone, I believe that we're live, back again. So if I could have a motion to reconvene. Moved by Councillor Pinero, seconded by Councillor Page. All those in favor? And that carries. So first up tonight, we do have a cultural presentation, singers from the Filipino community. Our cultural development coordinator, Joy Barrett, is here to introduce a cultural presentation in honor of Asian Heritage Month. Our staff have been making arrangements for a cultural presentation before the tragic incident in Vancouver at the annual Lapu-Lapu Festival, which celebrates Filipino culture. Today, we pause to reflect on the harm that was caused and to join our hearts with the Filipino community.
We are honored to have with us here tonight, representing the local Filipino community, 19-year-old Selkirk students and singers Mia Lomantad and Sidre Kaunan. They will be performing the song Ako Naman Muna, which directly translates to me first.
Hello. First of all, thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to share our culture and our language. It means so much to us, and it's such an honor for the both of us to represent our country. My name is Mia. My parents and I moved here from the Middle East back in 2023 to start a new life from scratch here in Canada. Here with me is Sid, who moved here last year with his parents and his younger twin sisters. Slowly and carefully, we've been doing our best to get by. It's not easy, but we are grateful nonetheless. The song we'll be performing is, as Joy mentioned, is titled Ako Naman Muna, which does directly translate to me first. The tragedy that happened in Vancouver has broken the hearts of many and will leave a deep scar in the Filipino community here in Canada and back in the Philippines and everywhere around the world. We chose this song as a reminder in these hard times where many of us are hurt and confused that there will be light somewhere in this darkness. It's a reminder to care for ourselves and one another, and it will also be a reminder to breathe and live on in honor of those who are no longer here and who we have yet to become. So, yeah. This is our little song. You can have some lyrics.
No, and just come a little bit closer to the table, but stay on that angle. Like, yeah, come in.
All right, okay, right here.
Can you see yourself now on all the screens?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have to stay a little bit closer to the table. Yeah, perfect.
Okay,
You're perfect
awesome.
right there. Thank you.
Sorry, technical difficulties, it happens. Kada hakbang sa lupa'y para akong inaalon at nalulunod sa batikos ng mundo, sa kung ano lamang ang kaya ko. Bigang-bigala sa mga problemang di masolusyonan agad, parang wala nang bukas. Pwede bang umiwas? Hinahanap ang sarili, ngunit di nakakayanin sa ligaw na dinadaanan ko. Saan na to patungo? Saan ako patungo? Dahan-dahang tumingin sa salamin upang makita ang ating kagandahan. Dahan-dahan nating simulan muli ang paghakbang. mayabang ka, langitan, oo, pagod ka na. Pero di ka nag-iisa, kaya't lumaban ka at sabihin, ako naman muna. Feels like I'm floating in the middle of all their foolish phases. Another moment where their smoke fills up my lungs. Afraid that I'll never deserve their love. And I'm a mess that's sinking. Where could I go for some relief? They always cast us out, all sinners playing saints. I need a second to just breathe and figure out what I believe and who I am and what I am not. I swear the sun will shine again. Just say you'll be here until then. Take a minute to just think about everything you see. Take a minute, let it wash away. Remember that you are everything you need. Take a minute to find all the light in this lovely life, a future waiting inside. I know you've had enough, but tomorrow's far from done. So just stay a while and sing out loud. Ako naman magpapalawag sa mundo, maghahayaang malumok ang puso mo sa iba, bato sa'yo ng iba. Tandaan mong sapat ka, dahan-dahan tanggalin ang maskara at hayaang pumulo ang bumabadyang mga luha. Let your heart look at the sky. There's a reason why it's all coming clear. All the people who matter the most. Oo, pagod ka na, pero di ka nag-iisa. So just hold my hand and sing out loud. Ako naman muna. Ako naman muna. Ako naman muna.
Mia and Sid, I want to thank you so much for bringing that lovely song to our council chambers tonight. And myself and council, we welcome you and your families to Nelson.
Thank you so much. It's been
Thank
such a
you.
pleasure to live here.
It's a pleasure to have you living here.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So council, unless unless the media wants to participate in the public participation this evening, I am going to give that 15-minute allotment to a few council reports before we move into our delegations, because we had a very heavy agenda on our regular business meeting. And so I'm sure people have a few things they'd like to report out on. So anybody want to start? Okay, Councillor Page.
I did circulate just where a bunch of things we already said, land current, so if there's any questions around that. But I will touch on what we covered in our last week worth of meeting, which was of course the first layer of approval to third reading of the Spearhead project for land use. There's some conditions in there around water quality and environmental that need to be met in order for that to move forward, from Ministry of Transportation and Transit and interior health, just being sensitive to the concerns raised by residents out there around that. So that's moved on to third reading, and it won't come back for adoption until those conditions are met. We had a full house, and our Zoom meeting was fully subscribed for the ostrich advocacy group, which we had a good hour plus of public time, and we were really grateful to have Vice Chair Aidan McLaren-Co running that meeting. He did a really good job. Put the voices first and the participatory nature of democracy front and center. So we took a lot of time hearing from people at the board meeting with their concerns around how the Canadian Food Inspection Agency is moving through the process of dealing with food safety up at Edgewood. In the end, the board opted to put some additional requirements around the acceptance of any kind of material, asking the Food Inspection Agency to confirm tested numbers for anything that they want to drop off, and to give us actual data and be transparent with the public on what they know about the situation. And so that passed unanimously, and we still threaded a very delicate position in terms of we run and operate landfills. It's a regulatory statutory requirement for regional districts. We handle that type of material on a regular basis, and we do so with care and consideration and attention. And at the same time, there was questions around how much more information and how much more transparent can we ask the Canadian Food Inspection Agency to be around this particular topic, being sensitive to the desires of the community and the voices of the community. And beyond that, the discretionary grants and the normal to and fro of the RD stuff.
Next question.
Yes, Councillor Woodward.
Thank you. So from what I read in the news, that this inspection agency is going ahead. Seems like they are moving forward.
Our focus very much was on what are the requirements that we're putting on for the materials that are being received, and recognizing that the Canadian Food Inspection Agency is also going through its diligences. It has its own goals that it's trying to meet in terms of keeping the food system safe, and it's not. Vice Chair McLaren-Co is very clear with people in the room. It's not our job to tell them what they should be doing. It's our job to make sure our resource recovery and our landfills are operated effectively and efficiently, and that we know what's going into them, and that when we can ask for additional clarity. And I would say we've run into similar conversations. I share some tables with McLaren-Co around how higher orders of government do consultation and public transparency within the Coogee boundary, specifically BC Hydro and things considering the Columbia River Treaty. And so there's a theme there of just expecting the federal and the provincial governments to be a little bit more in community and talking when these things are coming up, and making sure that information is getting out in a transparent manner, and people don't feel like they're shaking their fist at the clouds, because that's an ongoing thing. So
Thank you.
Yeah, so we weren't trying to strong arm the CFIA into doing anything that it doesn't think is appropriate and proper, but we were trying to say, can you tell us what you're bringing? Can you tell us these things? Tell us that these creatures have been tested. Can you tell us how many? Can you tell us how many have been exposed? So we have some clarity around that. And can you tell the public?
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no further questions, anybody else have anything they'd like to report? Councillor Lockenberg.
Just a quick one from the West Kootenay Transit Committee. We had a meeting this week, and the one thing that came out that I want to refer back to council on, in particular, is something that actually originated at the RDCK, which was the exercise in determining the values that inform from their table, from our table, from the RDKB table, that can then guide BC Transit on the possibility of an increase in the user fare increase. So before we do undertake a fare review process with BC Transit, because that's there's one staff person at BC Transit that undertakes fare reviews. It could be a multi-year process just to get into the front of the queue to then move that along. The RDCK undertook a process of establishing their values, as I said, and what we said at the table, we passed a resolution at West Kootenay Transit Committee to then get in the queue for the fare review. So we're in the queue, and then go back to each table for us to have a discussion about why we would potentially want a fare increase or not. What are the values that we would like to share forward to guide that fare review? Because it's very possible that the end product of this fare review is an actual decrease. If we say what we're trying to maximize is accessibility amongst certain groups and so on, I just want to stress that that's a possibility. When you do a fare review, the idea is that it's just naturally going to result in an increase. The question is how much. That could happen, but it could also go the other way. So I guess what I'm saying is at some point as a table, we'll need to bring an agenda item forward to have the discussion as a council on why do we value transit, assuming we do, what are we trying to achieve with transit, who are we trying to serve, and what would we like to see an increase? Do we think that our residents would be okay with an increase if it resulted in better service? Or do we want something different? So I just, Councilor.
Through the chair, thanks so much. That's interesting. Does BC Transit, the governing body of our that we subcontract through, do they not have their own values to which we must adhere?
They're in some sense they're like a service provider to us. Like
Okay.
we're the governance body. It's our transit system. We could set the fare whatever we want, to be honest. Like we could say, you know what, we want to make it a $10 service for $10 limousine service. We could technically do that. I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit.
Yeah, I think the intersection is if that results in additional bus requirements, et cetera, I would say then BC Transit does have an interest because they can, they have to subsidize the, that side of it, the operating side. We are 100% revenue, so it didn't have any ramifications from their operating side or capital side, then it's probably all in our court, but if it does, I would say they do have an interest.
They have an interest with it, fair enough. Danica made clear, because that question came up in the meeting, somewhat in the meeting, about who sets the fares, like who ultimately decides on the fares, what they're gonna be, and that does come to us. Obviously, there's other considerations because, like the CEO said, if it results in a dramatic increase in ridership and all the rest of it, then there will be definite impacts. But she did stress when that came up, like, no, you guys decide, but be very careful about going through this fair review process, because it can take time. And then what we stressed was, we want to have a say in the same way the RDCK did on what we want as an outcome, as opposed to just having it go away and then having it come back as a recommendation.
Can I just?
Councillor Page.
If I may.
Sure, yeah.
Just to fill it out a little bit, the RDCK Transit Services Committee had that values conversation, and part of this was brought up because in recreation, we've developed the fees and charges work, which has been informed by values and helps determine through cost allocation where fees may land. And so part of the idea, I think, would be getting all the partners to also add into that work, because one of the outcomes could be a framework on how you go about saying who you subsidize and who you don't subsidize in terms of demographics and access and minimal service, because the examples are being raised. You've got buses that go once a week out to Argenta. You've got buses that are going by up and down Cascar, every couple hours. And so if a framework could be developed that all the partners had a say into and had bought into, then conversations around fees moving, and with UMO and the ability just to update on the fly, that creates some ability to custom fit where the balance between fees and subsidization can live in a way that isn't kind of subjective price sensitivity that happens at the table. It's pretty common to be, we pick this fee because this fee feels right to these dozen people around the table versus that fee, and that doesn't really capture what you're trying to provide for staff. So that was part of it.
Councillor Payne.
So was that the process that we went through to get from the $2 fare to the $2.25 fare? And that's a couple of years ago, is it? It used to be $2.
I'm trying to remember, I think that was before my
Well,
time.
our fares, they did a whole fare review. We actually lowered fees quite a bit across the system.
Across the system, the intercity fares went down,
And
but
then-
the city fare went, my recollection as a rider was from $2 to $2.25. Cause it's trickier carrying around a toonie and a quarter at the same time, whereas the toonie was always easy, so that's the only reason I remember it. No objection whatsoever to paying the additional funds. I love it.
As part of, there was different fees in different communities and all that was a larger review, and so I think there's an in-between place between doing a full review and having fare increases for inflationary, if that's something that wants to be done in the short term. So I don't think you need to do a whole fare review to say we're having inflationary pressures and we want to keep that at this time, the balance of what fares pay as a percentage of what taxes pay. So I think do you want to change the structure from sort of the current structure, right?
Well, I think in part the challenge we have with an integrated regional system is that we've got 3 decision tables that have to coordinate, and the West Kootenay Transit Committee is just a coordinating committee that has no real power. So technically, we could, if we could get coordinated, raise the fares ourselves without going to BC Transit at all. The problem is inevitably, given all of the tables, somebody at, say, the RDKB is going to say, well, wait a second, what does BC Transit have to say, and how's this going to affect ridership and all these other questions? So anticipating those questions, that's where the fare review can really help, so we can get all the information back. But rather than sort of wait, or we can, in parallel, establish why we care about transit ourselves. Like, what are we hoping to achieve? What do we want to
what does our climate plan tell us we want to do?
Yeah, all of those things. And then, so when the fare review comes back to say, well, if you increased it, and we said this in the direction to BC Transit, we said, in your fare review, tell us what the outcomes are going to be on ridership. And so if it's a 25-cent increase, maybe that's well within the capacity of most riders to absorb. Or maybe not, maybe you're at a tipping point at that point and you really make the service unavailable to certain families that have multiple kids. I think
You don't have to pay for kids.
well, that's true, yeah, you're right,
Just
multiple
saying.
adult kids.
They can buy their own. No,
That's true,
sorry.
that's a good
Sorry,
point.
Rick.
So anyways, that's the idea. And for us, I think it would be just generally really useful as a council table to have that done so that we in our advocacy to the province can be much more forthright about what we want out of transit for our region, because that conversation is also pretty live right now.
And the other thing just to be careful of is because the fare revenue goes to local governments, if you reduce that, you're taking on more and more of the
Totally.
transit cost share, right?
Yeah, exactly that.
So BC Transit might say, yeah, we'd love great ridership, you guys reduce all your fees, pay, subsidize this more versus us subsidizing this more as a province. So just be careful, we don't walk into, local governments will subsidize this more and more, and we don't have to.
Yeah, and if I may, Mayor, sorry, I don't think we intended to have a full conversation about this. But if I may, just the last thing I would say on this is that if we have that conversation about why we want what we want to achieve from transit, then we may be in a position to say we're willing as a taxpayers to subsidize a little bit more percentage-wise, and then over the next 10 or 15 years, we can set a bit more of a vision together about what we want transit to become. And right now we can't do that. So we're kind of in this transit planning process that's relatively status quo. We're not making any meaningful changes with the transit system right now. It's just incrementally improving the service. So that may be fine. Or we might want to actually create a much more robust system for the long term.
Councillor Woodward, then Councillor Payne.
Thank you. My quick question is, what, in terms of the full cost of transit in this region, what does the fares cover?
Like, I'm off the top of my head, sorry.
I know,
I think it's something like 15%.
So it's very small.
Yeah.
It's relatively
Well, no, it's,
small.
for the city of Nelson, it's 300,000 or ish a year, isn't it? So that's a 2 or 3% tax increase.
Right.
No, but what's the percentage?
Well, I get that, but ultimately that's the impact on.
I see what you're saying. So there's like a 15% total coverage on the system, but there is a tax implication here in Nelson, which is considerable.
Yeah.
With the fares.
Yeah.
Fares, okay. That's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Payne.
My question isn't related to the fares, but is related to new routing, which is relevant to the conversation we're gonna have with BC Housing, so I can hold it till then.
Okay. Okay. Anything else? No.
No.
Any other councillors have anything they'd like to report? It's just been crazy. Councillor Payne.
I took a week's vacation.
That's
I left town.
where you were.
I left town, yeah. Tried to keep my head low, it was hard, but I did get back and go to the Nelson United Church Spring Fling Tea. They had a wide variety of bundt cakes. I don't know why that word makes me. It's probably from my big fat Greek wedding, if any of you have seen that one. Bundt cakes. Lovely event. They did extremely well in their fundraising. From there, I walked over to what I thought was the first market of the season, but somebody told me there might have been one of the previous week, but whatever. The market is hopping. If you haven't had a chance to be down there, lots going on, wonderful entertainment, and Cottonwood Falls is just a spectacular display of the majesty and power of water in the springtime, in the freshet, in our beautiful mountains here. So those were two of the fun things I did on the weekend once I got home to enjoy the offerings of our community.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's been a busy start of the month, I think, for probably everybody, lots of meetings and whatever. So I will leave all of mine off the list so we can continue on. So our next delegation, our next item is 12A, Nelson Fire and Rescue Services. So Chief, if you'd like to come up, and Heather, if you would like to join the Chief. I'm going to provide council with an update on the proposed approach to implementing the recommendations outlined in the Fire Master Plan developed by Tim Play and Associates.
Thank you very much.
Before we start, is it possible that we could get a copy of the PowerPoint for this presentation? It's in the agenda, but I just love to have a copy in my. No, like a.
Oh, hold on to here.
Yeah, so I can put it in
Sure.
my files.
Sure,
Thank
I
you.
can send that around.
Thank you so much.
Okay, yes, so on February 21st, Tim Ply and myself presented to council the interim Fire Master Plan. The reason it was the interim at that point is because there was still some key components that were missing that though didn't affect the budgetary process, affected the completeness of the document. So since that presentation, the regulatory requirements and the community risk assessment were completed. And so this is just kind of a snapshot of some of the key components, focusing on the short and medium term of the plan. The first one is.
Let's see.
Okay.
Presentation.
Yeah, is it up there right now?
It's on mine.
Okay, it's just delayed here. It should come up.
Presentation mode. Is it under here? Okay. Alright, well, you can try.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Oh,
That's nice.
It's new magic.
Alright. So, so the existing structure in the fire department involves myself and pretty much looking after everybody below me. The second in command is the assistant chief. He's in charge of prevention and training, and gets assigned some day-to-day activities, but largely I'm in contact with everybody in the department. So in the Fire Master Plan, there's a kind of a suggested reorganization. It doesn't look drastically different in the graphic. However, you'll see that the deputy chief, the hiring of the deputy chief would be in charge of operations and training, and so he would be in charge of the day-to-day operations and communicating with the shifts and leading the paid on call team. And I would be able to focus more of my time on kind of seeing the vision through and planning instead of getting kind of down in the weeds on a day-to-day basis.
Councillor Payne.
I'm just gonna ask you to use the other side of your brain and maybe say she for the deputy.
Oh, sorry, I didn't even.
We've talked about it.
Okay.
We've talked about it.
She, they, whatever, just
Sorry.
to give people the
I
opportunity
didn't
to think
realize I
outside,
did it, sorry.
outside the box.
Right, no, absolutely.
Not a, yeah,
I'm completely open to everything,
Wouldn't
thanks for
want to.
correcting me.
not a correction, just a suggestion.
All right. There's a new shift there too. Let's go back here. Swing's always been a shift. Yeah, swing shift. That's the acting captain. So those are the junior captain and this junior firefighter that do the holiday relief for the shifts. So let's kind of go back. They were on this one as well here. They're just at the end. Sorry. And so part of this, it'll be captured in the slides preceding this one here, or after this one. You'll see that there's a captain of fire prevention. So currently, right now, the assistant chief is the fire prevention officer. And so this would be a reorganization with the hire of the deputy chief. The assistant chief would move down to strictly a fire prevention role. So we'd be able to meet that need with the.
Councilor Woodward.
Thank you, Mayor. What happens in the recommended model? What happens if the deputy fire chief goes on vacation? How do you? Because he obviously or she obviously would have a lot on their.
Yeah, we would relieve for each other. Yeah. So
okay, so you would switch off essentially.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think there's a perfect world where we would have two deputy chiefs that would spell each other off. Clearly I'll have to be pulled into an operational role.
Periodically?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, thank you.
And I don't want to obviously be completely disconnected from the floor either, right? Like we're
for sure. We're a small part of it.
So the plan was broken up into 3 terms: the short term, the medium term, and the long term. Short term being less than 3 years, and the medium term being 3 to 6, and the long term being 6+ years. 6 to 10 is kind of where they were thinking of that. So now we get to the really small print, and of course I didn't bring my reading glasses, so bear with me if I squint. So we also broke up the plan into council decisions / budgetary implications, and then just the administrative recommendations of just maintaining the fire station. So some of the big ones, and these won't be a shock to you because they were presented to you in the 5-year budget this year. And that's why we kind of got the interim report to you early enough to make those changes. So first one, adoption of the fire master plan as a guiding strategic document that will happen sometime in a next meeting. Maintaining full service. So through the Fire Safety Act, every municipality is required to choose a level of service. For a municipality our size, full service is the right level of service. So the plan just reiterates to its recommendation is to maintain that level of service. Implementing organizational changes to ensure alignment with ongoing improvement and alignment with best practices. So that is to not stray from the best way of doing the job that you're doing, right? And then so the plan also recommends a bunch of some organizational changes. Some of them, like the restructuring of the assistant chief to straight days. That's necessary change to meet the Fire Safety Act requirements for fire prevention. Next one here is restructuring the department to provide. Oh, so sorry, I was talking ahead of myself. That's the one for the fire prevention and restructuring that position. The one exempt, adding the one exempt deputy fire chief responsible for operations and training, that was reflected in the budget as well. So that was when we went through the budgetary process. We staggered the hiring, if you recall. Recommendation was to hire 2 firefighters in July of 2025, which we're just completing the second hiring now. We've already hired 1 person. And we just did the physical on the weekend for hiring an external candidate. And then the deputy chief position will get posted at some point in the next week or 2. It'll probably soak for a month, and then we will do a selection process to give the next candidate ample time to find lodging, homes, all that sort of stuff for January 1 start. So yeah, going through all the job descriptions and hiring practices for that. So the next one is implement staffing adjustments to address identified gaps in unactioned work. So that's again that pivots on that deputy chief position and creating that capacity so that some of the regulatory stuff that needs to get maintained, like bylaws and operational guidelines and things like that, that there's actually enough capacity to action that work, because currently there isn't now, so. Commit to funding a Fire Smart coordinator position regardless of available grant funding. So through the province, Fire Smart coordinators are a grant funded position, and some municipalities have taken the, let's backtrack a little bit, you're given a certain amount of money, and in that money you can run your Fire Smart program. And if that means hiring a Fire Smart coordinator and then spending the rest of the money on mitigation or studies or seniors programs or whatever you want to do, then you can do that. Some municipalities, the regional district, have funded that position internally and then used the full grant funding to move the Fire Smart program forward. That's just a recommendation in the master plan. We haven't really figured out what that looks like, but it is one of the recommendations, so it's worth mentioning. The new fire hall location, clearly not news to anybody in this room that our department's old, and the fire plan has kind of identified that as well, and that the facility should get replaced, so that's a recommendation.
Thank you, Mayor. We're looking at other communities as analogs who built fire halls to the size that we need. What period of time does it take? Is it a longer construction period than, say, like a apartment block, or is it similar?
It all depends on the construction type you decide on. So there are some efficient, there are some construction types that are more expensive but take a longer time, but meet some of our other goals, like reduce carbon footprint and all that sort of stuff. And there's some other building styles that you can get a building up really quick, and it takes a lot less labor, but it might not align with some of our other values as far as energy efficiency or the carbon neutral or anything of those. So we're doing some internal studies on the two different styles to see what the the benefits are of each one, using Creston as a, because they just went through it and they had that decision to make. So.
Okay, that's a good analog.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, small print, I gotta figure out where I was at.
Construction of new fire hall.
There we go.
Probably keeping it fairly high level.
Yes.
Yeah, we don't have to go through.
Okay, all right, I got a pass, thanks.
More, salient ones that for council here.
Sure, well, these are the budget implications, so I understood. So obviously working with our mutual aid partners for automatic and mutual aid, it's ongoing. Incrementally increased fire staffing, which we are in the process of doing. Updating bylaws, yeah. Okay, medium term, you'll notice some of these repeat themselves because they're recommendations throughout the whole plan. So after increasing to a 3 personnel on duty, the recommendation is to eventually work towards the goal of 4 personnel on duty. Again, update the bylaw. Alignment with best practices. Yeah, still working on the 4 people on duty staffing model. And then there's a lot of administrative, and I will not go through all these because if you feel that you'd like to, I mean, a lot of this stuff is stuff that I've already got a good grasp on. I'm already working on, and I've been working on for quite some time now. But they're just the recommendations are put in there to concrete the validity of all the stuff that we're currently doing. And so there's a lot of the stuff that they're already well on being actioned. Sorry, it just looks the same. There's a lot of little administrative pieces here and there that need to be put together. And page 3 looks identical, so we're just gonna.
I think one of the key things there was going to third-party dispatch.
Correct.
Which we're in the process of doing.
Correct. It is. It's challenging. We're going through full evaluation of a bunch of different processes and different providers, and so we're getting close to having some final talks. We're just talking with 2 separate people right now, and it's amazing how ingrained Nelson Fire Dispatch has gotten within the community, and kind of the ripple effect, and kind of separating the two has been an interesting evolution. Okay, Kate?
Great, I love the high level stuff. I remember hearing something about with the recommendations of the increased staffing, that right now there's lots and lots of overtime, and so this budgetary impact wouldn't be quite as much as it might seem like it would be, like because of the savings in overtime. I think like from a talking on the street perspective, that's often a question that we encounter. Do I understand correctly that increased staffing might not actually be 100% increase in the budget of that wage?
Yeah, so I think that there are a lot of cost savings in the plan. So the third-party dispatching is a big piece to that, and that will eliminate a lot. It will almost pay for itself, just in the reduction in overtime.
Okay.
I think where the increased staffing will save is the burnout on the individuals not having to come in as frequent.
Okay.
So we'll get a very significant reduction in overtime callbacks with the dispatching.
Right. Okay.
And then as we have more firefighters to distribute the rest of that overtime burden to, it'll be less occurrences per person.
Gotcha. Okay.
So.
Thank you.
This is a nice little graphic. I like it. So you see in July 2025, which is now, 2 firefighters. We are on that plan right now. And then in 2026, January 1st, the deputy chief. July of 2027, an additional firefighter, and then in 2028, 2 firefighters. And the reason why we need to do 2 firefighters in 2028 is because once you get that number of firefighters, you need to be able to cover sick time, holidays, all that other stuff, and we just don't have enough spare hours to cover all that. So that would be that additional person.
Councilor Wood?
Thank you. I'm wondering about the time it takes to onboard a new firefighter, like into our system and our equipment, or are they already, when you hire them, already pretty much ready to go?
If we go external, they're already experienced firefighters, and so they already know how to firefight. They just need to use our equipment.
Okay.
If we hire internal, then there are already our paid on call, and they're already familiar with our equipment. We just need to teach them to upgrade them a little bit to the calls that they're not used to going on to.
Okay, so not too long, is what you're saying?
No. The hiring process takes longer than getting them familiar. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I think we're trying to fill some gaps here. We have this group of firefighters that are experienced and are likely going to start to retire in the next few years, and then we have a junior group. So part of the strategy is how do we get more experience into the department while we still grow the junior folks. So the hiring actually allows us, that increase in staffing allows us to start to address the fact that we have this 2 groups, one experienced and one inexperienced. So even though the familiarity doesn't take as long to get to that captain level, that person in charge is, takes time, right? So that is the advantage. That's the mix we're trying to make, and I think we're doing that with this hire, these 2 hires here.
Yes, the benefit of having the 3 firefighter shifts instead of 2 firefighters. Right now, you have the same amount of captains that you have firefighters. When you lose a captain, you lose a firefighter. And so when you get multiple captains retire in a short period of time, which it happens cyclically, it happened when I got hired and now it's happening again. I'm probably gonna lose 3 or 4 captains in the next 3 years. And so if we stay to this 1-to-1 ratio, then I always have an extremely inexperienced bottom tier of firefighters. So with this upstaffing to a 3-person shift, I have that middle rank, and that gives them the ability to build some maturity. And so you're not being pushed from a junior right into being an officer. Yeah, it's an awful cycle to be in.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Tate.
Thanks. And another thing that's come up in a couple of your visits and we hear in the community has to do with the response when we have 911 calls for folks who are having challenges with overdose or other types of street challenges where the whole big truck comes. And I know that has something to do with our council policy and has something to do with when do you tip the scales for life safety. Is that captured in any of these bylaw reviews or
It is
it is in the 163 pages, but I'm curious, is it in the next 6 years?
There's an initiative right now through the Fire Chiefs Association. They're working on an initiative with BC Ambulance to sort this very issue out. And so I'm waiting for that process to kind of get developed. And then so it's going to be a process. I believe that they are doing a couple of case samples throughout the province on how it's going to work, where it'll give a mechanism to the municipalities to kind of, I would say negotiate, but to set your level of service with BC Ambulance, and it creates a mechanism to do that. And so we're just waiting for that to kind of be finalized.
Okay, so we can stay up to date on that. That's a pretty big deal for a small municipality that has our own police and fire. Yeah.
And third-party dispatch will give us more opportunity because they will,
Be able
once
to
you set that
triage.
service level, then
Yeah.
they will call us once, you know, you need that service level and not for ones that aren't meeting that service level.
Great, awesome, thank you.
So we're setting the bones in place for that.
Great, thank you.
Again, this is some more of the stuff that you've just heard. Recommendation 10 is to hire the deputy chief. You were just advised that there's going to be an internal restructuring with the current assistant chief and a dedicated fire prevention position. That is a snapshot of a training thing that we did with BC Wildfire and RDCK, but that is just to capture the Fire Smart Coordinator position in the city of Nelson is extremely effective. So we look forward to the opportunity one day to come to council and show some before and after photos of a lot of the fuel treatments that we've been doing around the city of Nelson. And only possible because of having the right person in that job.
And you're doing the pickup and shipping again this year, right?
Yes, and we're doing a call out to the city. Before we did test samples, we did certain communities that we identified. And this year, we're gonna try putting the call out to the community. It's gonna be limited participation, but we figure we need to try it out and see how it is. Yeah, that's gonna be great.
Great.
Yeah, it starts on the 30th.
Secure the new fire hall, doesn't have to look like that. I just saw that one and I'm like, I really like to look at it, I'm sorry.
That's not red.
There's a little red there.
The alarm goes off, the lights. Again, recommendation 49 was to work with the regional district and work on the automatic and mutual aid agreements.
And Chief, maybe just a reminder of sort of the, you know, why and what that, you know, the concepts of responding. There's, you know, there were some concepts there that talked about we need X amount to respond and to meet these different service levels.
That's right.
Of being a full service department, and you need this, I forget what the term was.
Yeah, you need X number of like a reserve capacity in your fire crews. And so that where teaming up with the regional district would be to a
surge capacity. Or
yeah, you're the surge capacity. So in the event that we had subsequent calls, like we had 2 major structure fires, 3 major structure fires. It's happened through my career a couple of times at the same time, that we could be better familiarized and have better agreements with each other versus just a tender and 2 firefighters. That's currently what our agreement was through the majority of my career is, you know, we supplied a tender and 2 firefighters. Just to open up some of that language that gives you the ability to, you know, get the resources that you need. And then to obviously train, and it's a big commitment because welcoming another fire department into your town doesn't necessarily mean that they know how to, you know, utilize your stuff. So, but definitely something to work forward to build that surge capacity.
Thank you. So do you obviously you do training with the RD and the Nelson Fire Department together?
We do for our Superior Tango Shuttle Service certification is when we do the majority of our training. As far as training,
like, do you do would you do run-throughs of, let's say, I guess maybe it's very challenging because you're using equipment that might be needed, but I mean, just to do, maybe it's even just tabletop exercises to.
Short of what we've been kind of branching out with for wildfire and involving some of the regional partners in wildfire, the majority of the participation has been that water supply evolution, which has been, through my career, has been 99% of what the need is. But to build that surge capacity, that, you know, planning for the rainy day, planning for the bad day, that's kind of where we need to start thinking.
Right. I'm just thinking of if you think of the region as a not separated out, but actually as a full team that needs to tackle. I mean, as you know, as climate change becomes more intense, the region needs to work together rather than just, you know, separate unions. But that would be worked upon every year to get better and better, so that we're a more fluid region.
Yeah, and we do that on the wildfire side. The structural side is a lot more challenging.
Sure.
To kind of check that box and train together for that. But it's certainly things that, you know, working with a regional district we can do, but not something that we've done.
Is it something that you'd like to do?
I never look away from any opportunity. You know, we definitely with the right relationships we can build those systems. They are going to be very much low frequency, high hazard events, and so it's the training around that is going to be very tricky, especially with just the paid on call and the volunteer turnover that everybody kind of is suffering with right now, and just keeping those skills fresh. It's going to be challenging.
Okay, thank you.
So this one here we've semi-tackled in the not too distant past, but restructuring the paid on call pay scale to more reflect experience and training versus strictly just time with the department. There's through the training, the final goal is firefighter 1001 level 2, but to get there you got to go through, you know, having 0 training to getting trained to exterior level and then interior level and then 1001 and then full service. And so having that align with the pay increases provides a little bit of incentive to kind of advance through the system and make the practices, make the tests. And these are just little timelines that basically say a lot of the stuff that we've already said. The securing the fire hall, a couple new firefighters, the deputy chief. This is just kind of maps out the timeline. Through the short term, there was one here that I wanted to discuss, was the engaged fire underwriters. So engaging fire underwriters. So I had a meeting with fire underwriters, and I broke open his spreadsheet and had all the math, and it was great. We threw all of the significant changes to the fire master plan into his spreadsheet to kind of predict what the insurance rating for the city would look like if we implemented the fire master plan. And it was shocking, actually. We didn't think that we would be able to get to the level that we will get to. And so looking at a spreadsheet, implementing the fire master plan as recommended, we would go to a commercial fire rating of 2 and a dwelling protection grade for residential of a 1. So the best you can get is a 1 and a 1. And yeah, we both of us didn't think that we would get there, but we did the math and we inputted the variables, and it came out as a 1 for the dwelling protection grade and a 2 for commercial. And currently we are at a 2 for the dwelling protection grade and a 3 for commercial. But I've already brought us up from a 4 in commercial earlier this year, or late last year. So we've already made a good jump, and we're set to make another good jump. And so, and then looking at the grading, I can see some conversations that need to happen as far as some of the stuff that we're not necessarily receiving full credit for, that maybe we can work on. I'm not gonna say we're a 1-1, but it's very promising to have for a municipality our size to have that kind of insurance rating. Now, the question is what does that mean? And so that's meetings that I'm gonna be having with some insurance companies further down the road to see what those implications look like financially, because the fire underwriter sets the grading, but it's up to the individual insurance companies to apply it, and they can apply it differently. So we're gonna run through some scenarios and see what that looks like, but I have to schedule those meetings and find the right people that are willing to kind of run those scenarios, so.
And that is hopefully part of a financial position. There might be more taxation on our side, but homeowners and business should see the saving on the insurance side of it. So even though those won't show up on our books, the resident, the business person should overall see, if we do this right, that they'll drive some significant insurance savings that offsets taxation, and we know where insurance has been going these last number of years. Substantially increases.
Sorry.
Yes.
Thank you. Is that something that, if we get to that kind of 1-2, maybe 1-1, is that something that, Nelson can advertise to attract business?
Sure.
Is that a selling feature for a business to come here and be like, oh, they got a 1-1, so it's good for me?
Yeah, I would suggest that's probably not a large factor in that business or in that decision making, but it is a factor for sure.
Well, I guess it's better than being a 3-4.
It is.
No, like I said, insurance, like we're seeing that in the city, what our insurance is going and doing, and I'm sure you're seeing that personally on your home insurance of the massive increases that has been occurring here.
And everything else is largely what you've heard me say a couple of times already, so I will save you that. And that's the plan in a nutshell. And if there's any questions.
Councillor Tate.
I know that some of the changes we've already approved for this year's budget, and I have a curiosity if you have a plan B if there isn't space in the budget in the upcoming years, whether it's a different council or the economic sands are shifting, what that might look like. Or would you consider also pulling out a plan B that costs less?
I think we've, for the budget this year, I know we looked at 5 different models to come up with the most reasonable one and the one that had kind of the most consistent implication instead of creating big spikes here and there.
Mm-hmm.
As far as a plan B,
I think it's more timing wise.
Just would be spread out, is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Plan B is just spreads it out. Gotcha.
So how quickly can we get there to, we're ultimately, I think one of the driving factors here was, just the number of call outs per person that we're seeing. I think the stats were, we've seen, those call volumes increased 340%, I think, over last 20 years, and there has been or 30 years, I guess, there's been no change in staffing over that time, so it's hard to, we've added, would you say 1,000 residents, or 1,000 dwelling units, I think, over that time as well, so ultimately, we're gonna have to, increase that staffing to, or I guess plan B, you change your service level, but that we're not, wouldn't be exterior or interior fighting, being able to respond, obviously with our heritage buildings and all that, we could lose the whole downtown in a fire, so those are those intangibles that, this is a risk-based approach to, to managing, dwellings and safety and property.
Thank you. Any other further questions for Chief or Heather?
Usually for Heather.
Okay, well, thank you very much for coming, and 136 pages, I have to say, I did try my best, but it was a long weekend, and I thought somebody will forgive me for not getting through the full document, but.
This wasn't different than the previous one when Timplay came, but there was.
The only thing that you'll see that would be different, I think there was a little bit of wording change, but largely the regulatory review is put into this one.
Yeah.
But
graphs were all the same, I think.
Yeah.
I think that, as you mentioned, that we already in 2025 have already taken a look and started some of the implementation of this plan. That's why we did get to see it a bit earlier on, so we could start doing budget. And obviously this plan will guide us when we hit September and October and November and December and January and February, when we start the budget process all over again for what the next bits might look like. So I just want to thank you for coming tonight and doing the presentation. And we know where you hang your hat and park your red truck, so if we need you down again real soon, we'll make sure to get you back on the council agenda.
Thanks very much.
So. Okay. Next up, we have BC Housing. So Tyler Baker and Nanette Drobot, is that how you say your last name? Yeah. Okay. From BC Housing will provide council with an overview of the organization and current shelter and housing projects in Nelson, and offer council the opportunity to ask some questions. So welcome. And
Drink or anything?
okay too. Over to you. I think there's a slide deck here somewhere for it to pop up for you.
Yeah.
So you'll be happy to know while she's setting that up that obviously we have this strong fire plan before us, so that those, the money that you're investing in the community of Nelson as BC Housing is going to be well protected by our fire master plan, so.
And well served by the Chris Johnson Center for Excellence.
Yes. And I'm sure that has implications in terms of when our fire rating is very high, that when we're a 1 or a 2, that decreases the overall costs to BC Housing and its service providers that have housing developments within the city, so.
For sure. I mean, one of the things we will be talking about today is the relationship between our services and first responders, so there's a definite link there. So I'm Tyler Baker, I'm the Director of Development for the Interior Region.
I'm Nanette Drobot, I'm the Regional Director of Operations.
So between us, I'm generally deal with new construction, new projects, and then once they're built, Nanette's team manages them for the rest of the life of the building. So we'll each be doing different parts of the presentation today. So we have a first part of the presentation that we're hoping to be in the public session, and then a portion in the closed session. what does BC Housing do? So we develop, manage, administer social and affordable housing across the province. A lot of the attention of BC Housing's tenants is around people experiencing homelessness, the shelters, the supportive housing that we provide. And that's actually where most of our presentation today is going to be. But we actually, the highest number of units we have in Nelson and across the province are for families, for seniors, for single people who are in need of affordable housing, or middle income people through the BC Builds program, which Nelson also has. So Nelson's well represented for the range of types of housing that we provide. And BC Housing also has a role to play in new home construction through the licensing of home builders as well. So we really deal with housing across the spectrum, and we deliver housing in partnership with other community partners. So BC Housing doesn't do it by itself. There's a few programs that we do where we're the developer, we're the builder, we go out and buy the land and build it. But the vast majority of the projects we deliver are in partnership with the nonprofit housing sector, with the federal government as a funder, with agencies like Interior Health, and with the local municipalities that we work in. We work really closely to determine where housing should go, how it gets approved, and once it's operational, working to make sure that any impacts or any issues that come up are addressed proactively to limit the impact of the community and make the projects more successful.
Can we ask questions
Sure.
midstream, or would you prefer we wait till the end? I'm just interested in a little more details on the relationship with the health authorities. How does that work?
Well, particularly in the Belonging in BC framework, there's some embedded relationships with the health authority as it relates to complex care in particular, and the supported rent supplement program. So complex care is the allocations in the interior region are both in Kamloops and Kelowna. However, the supported rent supplement program that is designed to attach a rent supplement in the private market, and then you add health authority supports, you have 15 rent supplements in Nelson, and they are all fully allocated, which is incredible. So those are the two that come to mind, current programs. We have another one, actually, the ILBC program that you have 15 rent supplements, but that was an older partnership with the health authorities where we provided the capital dollars and some of the operating dollars to support seniors in assisted living. And the health authority, of course, would pay the personal care and a portion of the hospitality.
Thank you. Was not aware of that one. Thank you.
And the net in, even the supportive housing and the shelters, there are IH staff that are supporting those folks in those programs.
Yes, that's true. They come in on an in-reach basis to support people who come to shelter. And the relationship is quite strong in both the shelter and supportive housing environment. Thanks for reminding me of that. I was thinking of just actual dollars being allocated to the actual.
That's what I was thinking as well, so thank you.
So I mentioned the housing across the continuum. On the left-hand side, we have projects that address homelessness. These are our shelters for people who really just require somewhere to shelter for a night or a few nights. And further on to the right, housing generally is arranged by the ability to pay higher rents and with decreasing levels of support. So we have shelters and then supportive housing services, which covers sort of a wide range of types of projects. The net mentioned some of the types of supportive housing that's aimed for seniors. We also would classify housing for women and children leaving family violence as supportive housing. And then supportive housing for people at risk of homelessness, there's even a range in that. Some people require very light supports to maintain their housing. Could be just, somebody checking up to make sure that everything's okay. Other and that could be like in Nelson, the units on Ward Street. what's it, I don't have the address in front of me, 546 or something.
500
Or it's
Bloor
more,
Street, yeah.
you know what, okay, good. And, or it could be something with more substantial support services like at North Shore Inn, where there's full-time staffing there, there's a full meal program, and that's what people need to maintain their housing. So there's a range in there. Talked about the affordable housing, that could be families, independent people, and seniors. We have a program specifically within the social housing stream for Indigenous people called the Indigenous Housing Fund. Nanette's mentioned rental assistance in the private market, so that's where we just basically top up somebody's rent so that they can afford private market rental, recognizing that just BC Housing isn't gonna be able to fund our way out of this. We really do rely on the public sector or the private sector to provide housing as well, and we support that. And then affordable rental housing, this is the middle income housing under BC bills. So shelters in Nelson's 23 funded shelter beds at Stepping Stones. There's a range of supportive housing, supportive seniors, and transition housing already in Nelson. Social housing, there's quite a few, 209 family social housing units, 30 rent supplements for those at risk of homelessness, and 149 for people just in the private market. That includes families and seniors and some of our other.
Councillor Payne has a question.
I was really surprised at the low number of families that are receiving the BC Housing Supplement. Is that what it's still called?
The RAP, yeah, Rental Assistance Program.
Rental Assistance Program, yeah. Is that, it just doesn't seem adequate for a town this size where so many of the meetings that I'm at talk about people who are challenged around not only rental but food security. So is there something around our marketing of that program?
Sometimes it is an education issue. People have no idea that they have access to it or that they qualify. So we always really try and have everybody know about things like SAFER and RAP.
Yeah, it
where
looks
it's a
like you're
simple
doing great with
application.
SAFER with 94.
Yeah, that's better.
That's what I would assume from that seniors market.
Yeah.
But I would need to think. I will take this opportunity to tell you that my family was one of the recipients of the first year that they started the RAP program, and it made a huge difference in our lives, $200 a month. And then I think within a year or two, they doubled it to $400, and we were just running around going, yahoo. So a great program that really had a dramatic effect on the lives of myself and my 4 children. But I think we need more here in Nelson, so I'll be talking to some groups and seeing where we may have missed it or how we're answering that in some other way. Seems low.
Yeah, encourage them to go online too, because it'll be right there. It'll show eligibility requirements. It also has a tracker, so you can estimate how much money you would actually make depending on your income.
Yeah.
And the rent. So yes, please do spread the word.
Okay. I just
Councillor
wondered
Tate.
if there was something I was missing that wasn't.
Thanks. Thanks so much for these numbers. Can you help me clarify? Because 23 at Stepping Stones is not the number that I'm familiar with for Stepping Stones.
Well, it is really 17 all year beds and then 6 during the winter.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. And then, thank you. And then for 209 family social housing homes, when you have the 209 there, if they were all 2 bedrooms, would that be 104? Or are they 209 like 2-bedroom units, 3-bedroom units, 1-bedroom units? Is that bedrooms or is that individual homes? I don't know what units means, that's what I'm asking.
Like one apartment unit with multiple bedrooms, just one unit.
Okay, and so if it's family, that means that it's gonna be more than 1 bedroom, for sure? Like those 209 is gonna be 2 or 3 bedrooms?
Yes, presumably, yes.
Yeah, okay.
You could have 1-bedroom units be a family as well.
Yeah.
Like it could be a couple.
Yeah.
Right, and that would be a family.
Okay, and then, so, and kind of just riffing off of Councillor Payne there, can a family be both in housing that's funded by BC Housing and also receive the RAP?
No.
So these numbers don't overlap at all, those are separate numbers.
And that concludes the public information. We do have some additional updates that touch on some other subjects as well.
Okay, before we go into closed, sorry, I'm just making a note about the last thing that you said there, thank you.
That's okay, and so I'm just gonna say it back. So for any of the rent supplements, you're gonna end up being in market or private housing to receive those rent supplements. And that's how I understood it as well, but I just wanted to be clear.
Anybody else have a question for open? Okay, seeing none. I need a resolution to close the meeting to the public. And it is the opinion of council that the public interest requires that persons other than members of council and staff and any approved audiences be excluded from this meeting, and that the meeting of council continue under section 91E regarding the following: the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of lands or improvements that the council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality. If I could have a mover, moved by Councillor Pinero, seconded by Councillor Woodward. All those in favor, and that carries.
Thanks, Bill.
I know I'm not wanted.
You're wanted, you're just not allowed.